What happens when us, promote false virtue in our words and our actions? Things like critical theory happen. How about this headline? Oakland's progressive mayor will exclude white families living in poverty from $500 checks. See the story at the link below. It'll amaze you. From the beginning of time, fools have perched upon some of the highest thrones that man has had to offer, proving that being elected does not make you any smarter. These types even make it into high places within the likes of education, governance, law enforcement, the media, the news included. They've been able to do so because of crazy ideas that have filled the collective conscience of our world from time to time. Guess what? This is one of those times. Good thing for humans that up until present we've proven that survival of the fittest is generally true. Then there are those, of course, that jump into the boat with the fools and go over the edge with them in it, along with truthful thinking. Even if you don't get in the boat, the damage these soon-to-be replaced self-proclaimed salvations of mankind cause are felt by you and I. We're generally the ones on shore that have to deal with their childish and foolish decisions that leave outcome for the rest of us to deal with. Seriously, what happens when we change our collective soul away from the truth? When we let the ideas of critical theory, social justice, sustainable development, equity, and the like to be our compass, well, then we'll walk in the direction those ideas point to. In that process, it allows for underqualified people to take the reins simply because of their progressive social score that's determined by intersectionality. When we all allow for the hollow virtue signaling, like we've seen to drive our perspective as a people, it distorts our view of the truth. When we allow this type of thinking, we can easily find ourselves in a position that the underqualified with no skill, ability, or experience can take charge. They hold the runner, they run the engine that guides our day-to-day. The longer they are there, the sooner we begin to get lost as a people and break down as a community. We begin making excuses for them and their outcomes. We look to blame others for their shortcomings while we pay for their actions. See, nature being what she is, we're beginning to run out of a required supply of intelligence, and thus the fuel to move us. Our social compass is broken as a people, and we all suffer because of it. All the while, there are those that are promising you that it's okay that you know very little because they have an expert to listen to and tell them what to do. As an example, the mayor of Indiantown, Janet Hernandez, has made this assumption more than once. She actually believes it. When a person is allowed to rise to the top of the chain because of social justice stigmas, diversity of race, equity instead of equality, then you're promoting those to positions of power without consideration of foundational skill to achieve the posts that you're putting them in. And you do so over those that have the skill but the wrong social justice pedigree. Well, if everyone else believes the ideas, then it must be acceptable, right? Wrong. Social justice and sustainable efforts have enabled minority to rise in leadership hierarchy without any need for merit. The Boeing 737 MAX airplane suffered 2 fatal accidents. To what extent were those accidents attributed to design work that had been done in low-cost, low-work ethic jurisdictions? Did those in leadership positions discuss the possibility of such risks? Or was it deemed too politically incorrect? To what extent were forest fires in California or the recent power outages in Texas a result of progressive policy, where people have been elevated to positions of authority despite a lack of competence? We'll never know the specifics, for people in the West no longer say anything that might be seen as bigoted. Those who dare say something get booted out. Welcome to the cancel culture. Errors accumulate, and then there's no one to challenge them. The social governance concepts pursued in Indiantown are exactly and essentially copying the globalist and internationalists' model of social change, which is anti-meritocratic. It will destroy institutions, the heritage, and the future of Indiantown. Is it still acceptable to allow this kind of thinking, even if the actions required to achieve the outcome are false? Unfortunately for most, yeah. When the most vocal proclaim mantra and virtue signal at the same time, somehow we seem to bite en masse. Few are willing to voice disagreement because they don't like conflict. In the meantime, you watch what you thought were reasonably sane people begin to justify and hold up nonsense for virtuous posture. Think of it this way. When you elect a person to a position of authority because of their gender or their race over their qualifications, then you're allowing a system without a foundation of merit to grow. When you elect people that do not have any financial skin in the game, you diminish your outcomes as a citizen. Worse yet, when you elect people that cannot even achieve an income that allows for their housing without aid from the taxpayer, then you've really done some virtue signaling. When you elect a person because they are your people, then you again diminish the merit of the level of skill and thus the outcome that ensues. This would be a good indication of what we mean. When you hear someone elected tell you that they're going to vote to raise the amount of money it costs to build a house by 25% overall because it's the reasonable thing for government to do, then you know you've elected a social justice scorecard instead of an American with skills. You can verify that by noting that they feel it's a waste of taxpayer money to hold a 4th of July celebration for the people of the village. All the while, they've been flushing your dollars down the drain with unnecessary bureaucratic feel-good BS and consultants to tell them what to think. Then, in the next breath, they promote a non-existent social justice warriors holiday over an American holiday, like Juneteenth over the 4th, Indigenous Peoples Day instead of Columbus Day. You get the idea. American is somehow not good enough for them. When you hear a sitting mayor proclaim that a candidate's experience for an advisory board is not required because they're a minority and they can learn from the experts, that should tip you off. Then in the next breath, they vote for a person to be added to a community board for the sake of equity, not equality. You should know them as dangerous. If equality was truly the virtue, then the other person under consideration for the advisory board seat that has credential, has a business, has experience in the arena of the board's focus would have been voted on the board, instead of voting for a person that has no depth of field and their sole qualification is that they are brown. Well, you tell me, is that American? No. When you force decisions to be made on race, you are a racist, simply because when you are racist, it's required to make consideration of one over another based on skin color. When you choose a person by gender for a role instead of qualification, you weaken the process and the outcomes as well. You're a sexist and a bigot if you think in this manner, then you act on it. The snowflakes scream of social justice, progressive liberty, and equity. Well, they're just getting started by those self-promoting progressive officials that openly admit they are clueless and need experts to be their source of ideas and knowledge. The brazenness of their lies would take your breath away if we weren't becoming so inured to them through their omnipresence. For the moment, at least, progressives are unchained, unrepentant, and uninterested in conversation. They're also in charge. This is a simple truth. Most people don't like change or conflict, but we do not like destitution and having our freedoms trampled even more. If we continue along the sick, twisted path of social justice and diversity for the sake of diversity, then we will fail as a people, as sure as there is real truth. You see, wisdom's not given to a man, it's earned. And without doing, he will not learn. When he has not done, then he's lacking in experience, and without experience, he's earned nothing. When in the end, it leaves him lacking the wisdom of those that have done and do know from their experience. This is exactly the position some elected politicos find themselves in, the same ones that in their words openly proclaim their lack of knowledge, the same people that you elected to represent you and be your voice, the same people that openly rely on experts for their ideas because they don't have the experience, knowledge, or wisdom to do it themselves. So if several on the elected council have this need for the experts to tell them everything, it's really the experts that are driving this train then, not you. In the least, you would think that the pool of knowledge the experts drink from should be considered by the council members. Instead, they place the expert on water and then see him walking. If the knowledge that's offered from experts comes from a place of deep toxicity, then one has to discern this fact for themselves. When, however, you're elected, do not question, but take the bit, like our own Tony Z has expressed, then you have a mindless zombie pack following the will and direction of the expert. The people of the village should demand that their council of elected begin looking for an expert with American ideas and principles. Better yet, let's find a professional. Unlike the international and globalist approach being taken by Howard Brown. Seems like a good place to start, especially if we're going to rely on the expert to tell us what to do. Unless, of course, you're a council member and think that the socialist, progressive, economic, and social justice path is the way to go. Again, we ask, who's running this village? This is a real problem not only for Indiantown, but now for the entire county. As extreme globalist, progressive politicians and experts are given control over millions of tax dollars, they'll use it to bolster their camp in your backyard. In under 3 years of existence, a sleepy 6,000 in population little burg has spent over $20 million in taxpayer money. They've also committed themselves into deep, long-term debt and grant obligations that will cost tens of millions more in the near future. Scary, really, because they could just flip a coin and make a decision, and you'd be in the same place either way. Screwed. There's more. Stand by.